Welcome to this week's message from Anthem Church. We're so glad you're joining us online today. Our prayer is that this message encourages you, strengthens your faith, and helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
Hello, everybody. Man, it's good to be with you guys. Send love to you from Anthem Westville. We refer to ourselves as Anthem Blessedville. We call you guys Anthem Suburban North. That's all right, but I send love from Nix and myself. Nix had the privilege of being with you guys last week, and it's just, man, it's a treat. Honestly, it is a treat for me to be with you and to see some familiar faces and to see some not familiar faces. That's beautiful. It means the church is growing, the church is changing, and Westville is going well. They send love to you, all of those good things, right? We started off, Rich started our vision series last week, setting our vision for the year out of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, calling the church to 4 things: a time to build, a time to plant, a time to laugh, and a time to dance. Who doesn't want to do that? I'm in. Building, planting, laughing, and dancing. Come on, building, I'm there. Planting, any day of the week. Laughing, I live my life. I live my life as a laugh, right? Dancing. The great thing is that the type of dance wasn't specified. I'm pretty good at the grade 7 shuffle. I can gumboot dance pretty well. That's it, right? It's within your ability to dance poorly, which means anyone can dance, right? That's a vision I can run at. I want to continue this morning out of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. It says this in verse 11. He made everything beautiful in his time. He's also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. So Solomon says there's a time for everything under the sun, and there's a season for everything under the heavens. And in God's time, he makes everything beautiful. He has made everything beautiful in its time. A friend of ours has a church planting network in Zambia. We actually started our service with a video from him a couple of weeks ago. And they go into Zambia and they have planted churches. They've equipped and trained church planters. They've got an education and literacy project. They sink boreholes to give potable fresh water. They are translating the Bible into a couple of local dialects. They have a radio station. They are training farmers how to farm, and because much of the country exists as subsistence farmers, whatever they farm is how they survive. And so they've got quite an amazing work there. Project Zambia, go and have a look at it. Anyway, there's an area just outside Mongu that's particularly arid, and they were struggling to grow any food there. And so what these guys did, they brought cassava. They imported cassava for these guys. If you're not sure what cassava is, it's a root vegetable. Looks quite similar to a sweet potato. Grows underground, high in fiber, high in nutrition. And the best part is it doesn't need irrigation, it doesn't need fertilizer, it doesn't need tending. Put it in the ground and it grows. Best thing ever. Good food, right? So they imported cassava, gave instructions to these farmers, put it in the ground, let it grow. They came back to South Africa. 3 months later, they went back to Mongu, and the crop had failed. They thought to themselves, how? Like, you've got to work pretty hard to not let cassava grow. You've got to work pretty hard to ruin it, right? So they started speaking with the farmers, and it turns out what was happening was, because it's a root vegetable, it grows underground, and so you can't observe the growth. As soon as it came out of the ground, as soon as there was a leaf out of the ground, the farmer went lekker. Pulled it out. No, it's not ready yet. Put it back in. Tomorrow, pulled it out, not ready yet, put it back in. So for the 3 months that this cassava was supposed to be going underground, it was being inspected for readiness every day. And so they thought to themselves, but how has this happened? We had this discussion with the farmers. What's gone wrong? They spoke to the Bible translating team, the guys translating the Bible, and into their language, and they realized in their language and in their culture, they had no word and no concept for the future. The 2 words were today and tomorrow. That's it. No concept of the future. So this presented a problem to the farmers, but it presented a problem to the Bible translating team. And so they had to come up with a word for the future, and they called it a long tomorrow. This is not going to be ready tomorrow. This is going to be ready in a long tomorrow, a future, something that's going to take time something that's going to take place not tomorrow, but further from then. The writer says there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, and he makes all things beautiful in its time. See, I think so many of us worry about the timing instead of worrying about the beauty. Don't worry about how long it will take. Only worry that it becomes beautiful. We get so caught up in the timing. Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Is today the day? Okay, I'll check it again tomorrow. Don't worry about the timing. Just worry that it will be made beautiful. This is a story of the Israelites in the desert, right? It takes the Israelites 40 years to do a journey that should take 11 days. From Egypt to Israel on foot with women and children should take 11 days. It takes them 40 years. There's a couple of reasons for that. They didn't get 40 years lost. There were some spiritual reasons for that. One of the reasons was that it took 40 years to get Egypt out of them. They couldn't enter the promised land as long as they were still full of Egypt. Right? If God had just taken them from Egypt into the promised land, he couldn't make it beautiful until Egypt was out of them. See, Egypt, they'd been in slavery in Egypt for 400 years, 4 or 5 generations they'd been in slavery, which meant that their ways of thinking, their identity, how they identified themselves, how they thought, their patterns and their habits, how they viewed themselves, how they viewed others, how they viewed authority, how they viewed a power structure to those below them, all of that thinking represented their old way of life. And it didn't take 11 days to get all of that thinking and living out of them. It took 11 days to get there, but it took 40 years to get that out of them. I think the church is full of people who are waiting for God to make an aspect of their life beautiful, and actually God is also waiting. God's waiting for Egypt to come out of us so that he can make it beautiful. See, God made the Israelites' story beautiful. The Israelites were into the promised land, but all of those of Moses' generation who left Egypt did not see it get made beautiful because they didn't get Egypt out of them. Friends, I think it's a tragedy. I think it would be a tragedy if the things that should be made beautiful in our lifetime, if the things that we should see being made beautiful happen after us. It will be made beautiful. Whether or not it will be made beautiful is not in question. It will be made beautiful. The question is, will you be there to see it be made beautiful? Will you be there to enjoy the beauty? Or will it be made beautiful after you're gone? Man, the things that I am called to enjoy, the things that I'm able to enjoy being made beautiful on this earth, I'm in. I want to see it being made beautiful. I want to see Rich dancing a ballet. I want to see it with my own eyes. The things that I'm able to see being made beautiful, I want to see it in my lifetime. See, your life will be made beautiful in eternity. All of your life will be made beautiful in eternity. And some of the fullness of your beauty, will only take place in eternity. That's fine. But the things that can be made beautiful in my lifetime, I want to see them. I want to experience them. So the beauty that I'm speaking about this morning is not an earthly standard. It's a kingdom reality. And so when I'm speaking about God making things beautiful, it doesn't only mean better looking. It means looking more like the kingdom. That's what beauty in the kingdom looks like. It looks more like the kingdom. See, all of us have a different standard for what we think beautiful is. Right? God has created us that way. Thank God. My wife thinks I'm beautiful. Thank God. She's blind. But we all have a different standard for what we think beautiful and for what we are attracted to, because that's how God has created us. But the beauty of the kingdom is that it's universally attractive. The beauty in the kingdom is attractive to everybody, because it's not about looks, it's about attractiveness. The beauty of the kingdom is attractive to everybody. This is what the beauty of the kingdom looks like. Perfect peace, wholeness, perfection, holiness, joy, eternal, not temporal. So when I say he makes all things beautiful, that's what he takes. He takes the characteristics of the kingdom and he makes the things on earth look more like the kingdom, which makes them more attractive because they're more beautiful, because they reflect the kingdom more accurately. The beauty of the kingdom will cause people to be attracted, not to you, but to the kingdom. So a couple of things about beauty. Number one, patience is the virtue of beauty. So a virtue is different from a value. A value is something that you intellectually hold in your head. I value this. A virtue is a habit that you have cultivated and grown and practiced and mastered. It's something that you do every day. That's the difference between a value and a virtue. So I can say that it's a value of mine to be on time. I can say that's my value. But if it's not my virtue, if it's not my habit to live an ordered, structured life with a well-run, disciplined diary, then I'm never going to be on time. So my value counts for very little if my virtues, if my habits don't underpin my values. Does that make sense? All 3 schools that I attended, we used to say the Lord's Prayer in assembly every day. And the reason we did that was because the school said, we are a school based on Christian values. Wonderful. It was not a Christian environment because the virtues of the kids in the school did not match their values, didn't match the stated values of the school. So my values count for very little if my virtues don't make sense of my values. If my habits and my practices are out of alignment with my values, I can put as many value statements on the wall as I want. I can say, these are my values as much as I want, but it's actually my habits that reveal what my values truly are. I think that there's too many people that hold Christian ideals as a value in their minds without having the virtues, without having the habits that lead to a Christian life. So if you want God to make things beautiful in your lifetime, then you have to have the virtue, you have to have the habit of patience. Patience is the virtue of beauty. 2 Peter chapter 3 says this in verse 8. Don't forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he's patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. So Peter says, while we are being made beautiful, God is not slow to deal with us. Actually, what he is patient. It means what Peter's saying is God is in the habit of patience. When God creates the world, in the book of Genesis, it says, first of all, God speaks into the void. It's formless and void. There's nothing. It's full of nothingness. That's what it is. And God speaks into that and says, let there be light. And there's light. In an instant, something is created out of nothing, right? Something is created out of nothing at the word of God. And then it takes him 6 days after that to create the rest of the world. Have you ever stopped and thought, why did he create something out of nothing? That's incredible. And then it takes another 6 days to create the rest of the world. And at the end of every day, he stops and he says, it is good. It wasn't because it was more complex. It's more complex to create something out of nothing than it is to create trees and water. Why does it take God 6 days? He could have just said, let there be everything, but he doesn't. He takes 6 days because God's habit is patience. While things are being made beautiful, while your life is being made beautiful, God's not getting frustrated with you. While you're continually repenting, God's not frustrated with you. He's patient with you. He's not slow to act. He's patient. Because patience is the virtue of beauty. Patience is the habit that leads to beauty. Does anyone know what the law of entropy is? The second law of thermodynamics. If my science teacher from school was still with us, he's probably turning over in his grave hearing me speak about science from the platform, given my matric science mark. But the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy, it basically states this. Everything in the world is slowly moving from a state of order to a state of chaos. Right? That's what science says, the law of entropy, the law of, that science calls it the law of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. Scripture calls it the law of death and decay, the law of sin and death. So science confirms Scripture, all right? Everything is slowly moving from a state of order to a state of chaos. But what is the law of the kingdom? The law of the kingdom is God speaks into the chaos, into the void, and out of that creates order. Right, so the law of the kingdom takes disorder and it creates order. The law of sin and death, the law of entropy, takes order and it creates chaos over time. All right? Which begs the question, friends, under whose law is your life living? Is your life living under the law of the kingdom, which over time makes things beautiful? Or is your life living under the law of entropy, the law of sin and death, which over time makes things worse, makes things uglier over time? James, the brother of Jesus, writes this in James chapter 1. Each person, in verse 14, each person is tempted when they're dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. After desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's fully grown, gives birth to death. So over time, sin makes things ugly. And under the law of sin and death, everything moves from a state of beauty to a state of ugliness. Under the law of the kingdom, everything moves from a state of ugliness to a state of beauty. That's the story of redemption. My life was ugly. My life was dead. I was then alive. My life was ugly, and as I'm under the law of the kingdom, so my life progressively becomes made more beautiful because it becomes more like the kingdom. Remember, we said beauty is the kingdom. So my life becomes more like the kingdom, which means it moves in this direction, not that direction. Friends, it's possible for you to be in the kingdom, but not under the law of the kingdom. If you're in the kingdom and living under the law of entropy, you can be in the kingdom, still living under the law of sin and death. Your life will not be made beautiful over time here on earth. It will be made beautiful in eternity, but you won't enjoy it while you're here on earth. You'll enter the promised land, but you won't get to see it while you're here on earth. Man, I'm in. I want to see it being made beautiful in my time, while I'm here, while I'm alive. So if you're patient, but still sinning, it won't be made beautiful. Sin, the law of entropy, makes things progressively uglier over time. I can't leave Egypt. Once I've left Egypt, I still have to get Egypt out of me so that I can enter the promised land. So patience and living under the law of the kingdom is the habit, is the virtue of beauty. Patience is the virtue of beauty. Number 2. Perseverance and faith is the disposition of beauty. A virtue is a habit that you keep repeating. A disposition is the way that you think and act towards the world around you. More than that, it's the way the world around you perceives you. When you leave people's company, what's the taste that you leave in people's mouth when they've been with you? Do you leave them with a taste of perseverance and faith in their mouth, or do you leave them with defeated and grumpy? Is it perseverance and faith, or is it defeated and grumpy? Nothing is ever made beautiful with a disposition of defeated and grumpy. Nothing is made beautiful. It's only made worse, which means that defeated and grumpy is the disposition of entropy. It's the disposition of the world. It's the disposition of sin, whereas the disposition of the kingdom is perseverance and faith. James chapter 1. Says in verse 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work in you, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. James says, when you suffer, when it seems like everything is against you, when it feels like you just lurch from one crisis to the next, when it feels like you can't get your head above water, when it feels like every time you get your head above water, somebody else does that and pushes your head underwater, when you feel like you face all of those things, James says, consider it pure joy, because the testing of your faith is producing perseverance. And what's the disposition of the kingdom? Perseverance. The writer to the Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 12, endure hardship as discipline. Endure hardship as discipline. When life's tough, put your hand up if your life's not tough. It says, nobody. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, then you are not legitimate. You're not true sons and daughters at all. So Paul says, James says, and the writer to the Hebrews says, hardship and suffering, first of all, will produce perseverance, and second of all, will produce faith. Because you can say, actually, I am a legitimate son, I'm a legitimate daughter, because I'm undergoing discipline. So I don't discipline children that are not my own. I sometimes wish that I could. Lord knows. But I don't discipline children that are not my own. I only discipline my children. So he says, endure hardship as discipline. And actually, when you have hardship and it's being endured as discipline, it should produce faith in you, because it's a sign that you are God's legitimate son and legitimate order. You're not an orphan. I understand that every hardship you face isn't from God necessarily. Sometimes you've made poor decisions. Sometimes it's your own sin. Sometimes it's somebody else's sin. And sometimes it's the consequences of a fallen world, a sinful world. But if you can put right whatever you need to put right, then you can endure hardship and trials and allow it to produce perseverance and faith. That's the disposition of beauty in the kingdom. That's what should be, the taste that should be left in people's mouths when they leave your presence, perseverance and faith. Here's the thing about discipline. It depends on the person being disciplined as to how long it will take for that discipline to produce beauty. So if I discipline my children and their response to me is anger, resentments, denial, bargaining, acceptance, whatever the other things are, if they respond poorly to that discipline, it's going to take a lot longer for beauty to be produced out of that discipline, because I'm going to have to repeat the discipline again and again and again. That's the story of those with toddlers. You have to reproduce the discipline over and over and over and over. Keep doing it. Keep going. Keep producing that discipline, because over time, it will produce beauty. See, you discipline an 18-year-old very differently to how you discipline a 2-year-old. If my response to God's discipline of me is one of repentance, geez, I'm sorry, I messed it up. If it produces a change in my disposition, a change in my behavior, a change in my thinking, that it's up to me how long it takes to produce beauty. I can resist it. You're free to resist God's discipline. It's just going to take longer to produce beauty. He says, endure hardship as discipline. Some of you have endured hardship for years, and you're wondering, why can I not get out of this hardship? Well, how have you responded to God's discipline? It will produce beauty. If you wanted to produce beauty on earth, put some things right. It will produce beauty in eternity. It's fine, but you're not going to enjoy it. Patience is the virtue of beauty. Perseverance and faith is the disposition of beauty. Number 3, waiting is the activity of beauty. He says, he makes all things beautiful in its time. In its time is not always our time. It's not always when we want it to happen, and that's for good reason. You might know the story of Joseph in the scriptures. So Joseph is the youngest of 13 brothers, and if I'm from a small family, I've got a bunch of kids, but I don't have 13 kids, right? Joseph is the youngest. And Joseph's father, Jacob, makes a critical parenting mistake. He treats the youngest as the favorite. Not only does he, and he doesn't do it surreptitiously, he tells everybody the youngest is my favorite, and then he confirms it by buying him this incredible coat, right? It's colored. Everybody else has gray coats. He's got a colored coat. So you can imagine how Joseph's older brothers feel about the youngest being treated as the favorite and then getting all the gifts, right? Terrible parenting advice. Don't follow it. It produces in Joseph's brothers the very thing that you would imagine it produces: resentment and anger towards Joseph, not only their father but towards Joseph. And so what they do is they sell Joseph into slavery. But this is slavery in a foreign land 3,000 years ago. Just for a minute, think what this has produced in Joseph's brothers and in Joseph. Right? The amount of desperation, resentment, and anger that they must have felt to sell their brother into slavery. They're not just bitter. This is deep. What this has produced, the rejection, the betrayal that this has produced in Joseph. All right? This is slavery in a foreign land. They don't speak your language. Slaves 3,000 years ago in a foreign land. The story of a slave is you're there to be abused, worked to death, and beaten up and beaten. That's your lot in life. Those 3 things. That's it. This far and no more. All right? There's no HR manager you can go and speak to. There's no after-drink works with the new colleagues, like a little meet and greet. There's no mom and dad can come and speak to the boss when you're having a hard day. There's none of that. This is slavery in a foreign land, right? It's produced quite a bit in Joseph's brothers, and it's produced quite a bit in Joseph. If you know the story, Joseph rises to become second in Pharaoh's household, in fact, second in charge of all of Egypt. And there's a famine in Canaan, and so Jacob sends these same 12 brothers, go to Egypt and get some food. There's this 2 to 3 month reunion of Joseph and his brothers. He recognizes them because he's second in the land. They've come to ask him for the food, and they don't recognize him, and there's this 2 to 3 month reunion between Joseph and his brothers. And it culminates in Genesis chapter 45. It says this in verse 5. Joseph says to them, surprise, it's me. He reveals himself, and then he says, don't be distressed, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Essentially, he says, no biggie. No biggie. You sold me into slavery in a foreign land to be beaten, to be abused, and to be worked to death. No biggie. Don't be distressed. Don't be angry with yourselves. Free yourself from guilt, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Just take a minute here. Again, think what Joseph's brothers have done to him. Think what it's produced in both of them. And yet this is Joseph's response. Anybody who's ever been wronged dreams of the day that the people who have wronged you need your help. You've dreamed of that day. It's going to be so delicious when they work out that they need me. The person who's been dumped dreams of the day that the person who dumped you comes to you and says, you know what, I've made a huge mistake. I've realized I can't live without you. Delicious. You get fired, and the company comes back to you and says, after 2 months, you know what, we've realized our company cannot function without you. Please, will you come back? Your friends excluded you, and they came to you and said, you know what, we've realized we can't have any fun without you. We need you. Please, will you come back and join our friend group? Those things rarely, if ever, happen, but we all dream of that day. Why? Because they're going to find out what happens to people that wrong us. We dream of those days because we want to repay those who have wronged us. When we're in the position of power, we will treat them, and they'll know difference. Joseph, he responds, no biggie. He's been wronged way more than any of that. It's no biggie. I want to free you from guilt. Don't feel guilty. Don't be distressed. How does he do that? By waiting. Waiting, we said, is the activity of beauty. So there's 22 years between Joseph's brothers selling him and Joseph's brothers needing him. 22 years has passed. Joseph hasn't spent that time sulking in a pit. He hasn't spent that time, no, I'm waiting. I'm just going to sit here and wait. Maybe something will happen. Maybe God will bring good out of this. No, waiting is the activity of beauty. Activity is inactive. It's not passive, it's active. It's something that you do. So what are the things that Joseph does in his waiting? He seeks God. He serves others. He resists opportunities to sin. He gains wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He uses his spiritual gifts. These are all the activities that Joseph does for 22 years so that his family relationship can be made beautiful. Joseph was just waiting. He wasn't doing all of those things. It would not have been made beautiful while he was on earth. It would have been made beautiful, but it wouldn't have been made beautiful while he was on earth. He actively waits. If it was rushed, it wouldn't have been beautiful. If Joseph's brothers had come in 4 or 5 years' time to reconcile to him, we're so sorry, can you forgive us? I can promise you that this wouldn't have been his response. If Joseph had just recently been appointed to Pharaoh's household, he'd recently acquired power, and immediately his brothers had come to him and said, please could we have some food now that you're here? This wouldn't have been his response. But he actively waits for 22 years. See, Nix, my wife, and I, we went from being friends to married in a time span of 8 months. No children, just 8 months. From nothing but friendship to married in less than a year. On the flip side of the coin, my mom prayed for my gran to come to Christ for 60 years. 6 months before she passed, she came to Christ. One was made beautiful in 8 months. One was made beautiful in 60 years. I can't tell you why some things take longer than others. I think there's sometimes practical reasons, and there's sometimes reasons we just can't understand. what I do know is this: if you're waiting for God to make something beautiful, do what Joseph did. He waited. He waited. He seeks God. He serves others. He resists opportunities to sin. He gains wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He uses his spiritual gifts. Do that. Waiting is the activity of beauty. Number 4, and lastly, recognition is the activation of beauty. One of the things that Joseph does in his waiting is he uses his spiritual gift to interpret a dream of Pharaoh's about 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows. And he recognizes what God is saying to them is that we're in a season of 7 fat cows, and we better start storing some stuff up because 7 skinny cows are coming. We're going to have some lean years. And it's because Joseph recognizes that Egypt is able to store up food and have food for themselves when the famine hits. Right? If Joseph doesn't recognize that, what happens is Egypt is also under a famine, which means that Canaan cannot get food from Egypt, which means that Jacob and his sons die, which means that there's no tribes of Israel, which means that God's plan for man on earth is dead in the water before it even starts. All of that activity from then on is dependent on Joseph recognizing the true condition. Recognition is the thing that activates beauty. Recognizing where we are and recognizing what needs to be done activates beauty in our life. You see, without recognition of our true condition, we cannot change our true condition. As long as I'm under an illusion, as long as I'm in illusions, I'm in the kingdom. No, but if I recognize it, I'm actually still living under the law of sin and death. Although I'm in the kingdom, I'm still living under the law of sin and death. Until I recognize that, I can't activate beauty in my life. As long as I don't recognize it, I just carry on wondering, why is things not getting beautiful over their time? Why is Egypt still in me? Why am I going around the same mountain for 40 years? Why do I keep going around it? Well, you haven't recognized what the problem is. Until we recognize our true condition, we can't change our true condition. See, friends, what I'm speaking about this morning is not a self-help message. You can take the first few points of this message, patience, perseverance, faith, and waiting, and you can try to live them outside of the law of Christ. You can live them in the kingdom outside of the law of Christ. And to be honest, you can live them outside of the kingdom and outside of the law of Christ. If you take those principles and you live by them, you will do well on earth. You can take the financial principles of the kingdom and you can live by them, and you will do well outside of Christ. But here's the caveat: you will only do well on earth. The 80 or 90 years that we live on this earth is a drop in the ocean of eternity. And so when I live by the principles of the kingdom, outside of the law of the kingdom, outside of Christ, I can live by those principles. I will do well in the drop, and I will drown in the ocean of eternity. Wouldn't you rather have it made beautiful in the ocean, and then from the ocean learn how to live in the drop? Isn't that the far better way to do it? Surely. So we know that everything will be made beautiful in eternity for those in Christ. And we also know that nothing will be made beautiful for eternity for those outside of Christ. Remember, beauty is not only when making things look pretty. When God makes things beautiful, He makes them look more like the kingdom. Perfect peace, wholeness, perfection, holiness, joy, eternal and not temporal. This is what beauty in the kingdom looks like. He makes all things beautiful in His time. That's what He makes all things look like in its time. Beauty has 2 purposes. Firstly, it's the antidote to trauma. And secondly, it's attractive. So sin has caused all of us to live in a world where trauma exists. And so God makes things beautiful, and He invites us to partake in this beauty as an antidote to the trauma of sin. This part of the beauty is for us. This is the part of the beauty that we are to take delight in, to build, to plant, to laugh, to dance, to take delight in the beauty of the kingdom. You can build, plant, laugh, and dance in Egypt. It's going to be very different to build, planting, laugh, and dancing in the promised land. You can build, plant, laugh, and dance in the desert. It's very different to build, planting, laughing, and dancing in the kingdom, because it's made beautiful in the kingdom. The second purpose of beauty is that it's attractive. The beauty of the kingdom in your life will attract people to Christ. Solomon says there's a season, a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven. There's good things and bad things. There's ups and downs. There's easy things. There's hard things. There's nice things. There's not so nice things. He says later in Ecclesiastes, it's meaningless. And it does not matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's easy or hard. It doesn't matter if it's nice or horrible. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. The only thing that matters is it in the kingdom and is it under the law of the kingdom? Because if it's in the kingdom, it will be made beautiful in eternity. If it's under the law of the kingdom, it can be made beautiful here on earth. And if it's not in the kingdom, and if it's not under the law of the kingdom, it won't be made beautiful for eternity. That's all that matters. Everything else, he says, is meaningless. The way of beauty in the kingdom is through patience, perseverance, and faith, through actively waiting, and through recognizing our true condition, either in the kingdom or out of the kingdom. And if you're in the kingdom, are you living under the law of the kingdom, which makes things beautiful? Or are you living under the law of sin and death, the law of entropy, which makes things less ordered and less beautiful over time?
Thank you for watching today's message. If you'd like to take your next step with us, get connected, or find out more about Anthem, visit our website or reach out through the Church Center app. We'd love to walk the journey with you.